My name is Violet, and I am 35 years old. For nearly 20 years, I built what I thought was an unbreakable life with my husband Derek. We had twin daughters, Emma and Sophie, both 17, about to step into their college dreams. Every sacrifice, every extra shift I worked as a nurse, every freelance accounting job Derek took on late into the night, it all went into one sacred fund, $125,000, their future, our pride. Until the morning I logged into our bank account and saw zero. The man I loved, the father of my girls, had vanished with everything we built, leaving only silence and a note that said he had no choice. Before we dive into what happened next, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? Please hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever trusted someone with your whole heart, only to have them shatter it in ways you never imagined possible. This story is about betrayal, but also about the strength we find when everything falls apart. Stay with me. Derek and I met when we were both 20 years old at Portland State University. He was studying accounting and I was in nursing school. We were young, broke, and wildly in love. We got married 2 years later in a small ceremony in my parents' backyard with string lights and homemade cake. It was perfect because it was ours. We settled in a modest 3-bedroom house in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon. The house had a small backyard with an old swing set we picked up at a yard sale when the girls were toddlers. Derek worked as an accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. I took a position as a nurse at the local hospital, working the day shift, so I could be home with the girls in the evenings. Our life was simple, but it was full. Every Sunday morning I made pancakes from scratch while Derek brewed coffee, and the girls would stumble downstairs in their pajamas, sleepy-eyed and giggling. On Friday nights we had movie nights, all 4 of us piled on the couch with popcorn and blankets. Emma and Sophie were not just sisters. They were best friends. Emma, the artist, spent hours sketching in her notebooks, dreaming of studying design at Parsons School of Design in New York. Sophie, the scientist, loved chemistry and physics and had her heart set on MIT. They were different in so many ways, but both brilliant, both kind, both determined. Derek and I were so proud of them. From the day the girls were born, we knew college would be expensive, so we made a pact. We opened a savings account dedicated solely to their education. Every single month without fail, we deposited between $300 and $500 into that account. It did not matter if the car broke down or the roof needed repairs. That money was untouchable. It was their future. I picked up extra shifts on weekends and holidays. Derek took on freelance accounting work in the evenings, sometimes staying up until 2 in the morning to finish tax returns for small business clients. We did not take fancy vacations. We did not go out to expensive restaurants. We wore our clothes until they were threadbare and drove our old sedan well past 200,000 miles. Every sacrifice was worth it because we were building something bigger than ourselves. After 17 years of discipline and determination, the account held $125,000. It was enough to split evenly between the girls, giving each of them $62,500. Not enough to cover everything, but a solid foundation. They could apply for scholarships, take out smaller loans, and graduate with manageable debt. We had done it. We had given our daughters a real shot at their dreams. The girls knew about the fund. We did not keep it a secret. We wanted them to understand the value of sacrifice and planning. Every year on their birthday, Derek and I would sit them down and show them the balance, watching their eyes light up as the number grew. They thanked us constantly, promising to work hard and make us proud. And they did. Emma earned a portfolio that got her accepted to Parsons. Sophie's grades and science fair awards earned her a spot at MIT. Everything was falling into place. But about 3 months before everything collapsed, I started noticing small changes in Derek. He became distant. He worked later and later, often not coming home until after 9 or 10 at night. When I asked if everything was okay at the office, he would brush me off, saying there was a big project and he needed to focus. I believed him. Why would I not? We had been together for 2 decades. Trust was the foundation of everything we had built. He stopped joining us for movie nights. He was quieter at dinner, barely looking up from his plate. When I tried to talk to him about the girls' college plans, he would change the subject or say we would discuss it later. I thought he was stressed. I thought he just needed space to work through whatever was weighing on him. I never imagined he was planning to leave. The week before he disappeared, Derek suddenly became affectionate again. He brought me flowers, my favorite yellow tulips, and took me out to dinner at a little Italian restaurant we used to go to when we were dating. He held my hand across the table and told me he loved me. I thought he was making an effort to reconnect after a rough patch. I thought things were getting better. I had no idea he was saying goodbye. It was a Monday morning. The girls had already left for school and I was getting ready for my shift at the hospital. I had received an email from MIT the week before asking for a deposit to secure Sophie's spot in the dorm. The deadline was approaching, so I sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop and a cup of coffee to transfer the money. I logged into our bank account, the joint account where we kept the college fund. My finger hovered over the mouse, ready to initiate the transfer, but when the page loaded, my breath caught in my throat. The balance read $0.00. I stared at the screen, blinking, convinced it was a glitch. Maybe the website was down. Maybe there was a delay. I refreshed the page. Still zero. My heart started pounding. I clicked on the transaction history, my hands shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. There it was, a single transaction from the previous Friday. $125,000, transferred out. The name on the transfer was Derek. I could not breathe. My vision blurred. I grabbed my phone and called the bank, my voice trembling as I explained to the representative what I was seeing. She put me on hold, and I sat there in the kitchen staring at the empty account, my mind racing. This could not be real. There had to be a mistake. The representative came back on the line. Her voice was calm, professional. She confirmed that yes, the transaction was legitimate. It had been authorized by Derek using his login credentials. The money had been transferred to a personal account in his name, only an account I did not even know existed. She asked if I wanted to dispute the transaction. I told her yes, but she gently explained that because it was a joint account and Derek was an authorized user, there was nothing illegal about what he had done. I hung up and immediately called Derek. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Panic was rising in my chest like a tidal wave. I called his office. His coworker answered, sounding surprised to hear from me. He told me Derek had called in on Friday saying he needed to take some time off for a family emergency. He had not been in since. My stomach twisted. I thanked him and hung up. I grabbed my keys and drove home as fast as I could, my mind spinning with 1,000 terrible possibilities. Maybe Derek had been in an accident. Maybe he was in the hospital and could not call. Maybe someone had stolen his identity and drained the account. There had to be an explanation. But when I pulled into the driveway and ran inside, the house felt wrong. It was too quiet, too still. I rushed upstairs to our bedroom and threw open the closet. Half of Derek's clothes were gone. His favorite jacket, his work shoes, his good jeans. I yanked open drawers, his socks, his underwear, his t-shirts all missing. I ran to his home office. The desk was bare. His laptop was gone. I pulled open the filing cabinet where we kept important documents. His birth certificate was gone. His passport was gone. His social security card was gone. On the desk, tucked under a coffee mug, was a small slip of paper. My hands shook as I picked it up. The handwriting was Derek's, scrawled quickly, almost illegibly. It said, "I'm sorry. I had no choice. Don't look for me." I sank to the floor, the note crumpling in my fist. My chest felt like it was caving in. I could not cry. I could not scream. I just sat there numb, staring at the empty desk, trying to understand how the man I had loved for 20 years could do this. When Emma and Sophie came home from school that afternoon, they found me sitting at the kitchen table staring at nothing. Emma dropped her backpack and rushed over. She asked me what was wrong. I looked up at her, at both of them, their faces so young and hopeful, and I felt my heart shatter all over again. I made them sit down. I told them the truth. Their father had taken all the money from the college fund. He was gone. I did not know where he was or why he had done it. Emma burst into tears, immediately sobbing into her hands. Sophie just stared at me, her face pale, her mouth slightly open. She did not cry. She just looked shocked, frozen. Emma kept asking why. Why would he do this? Why would he leave us? I had no answers. I held them both, and we sat there together, a broken family trying to make sense of something that made no sense at all. That night, none of us slept. The girls stayed in my room curled up on either side of me like they used to do when they were little and scared of thunderstorms. But this storm was not going to pass. This storm had torn our lives apart. The next morning I called the police. I filed a report explaining everything. The officer was sympathetic but not optimistic. He told me that because the money had been taken from a joint account by an authorized user, it was not technically theft. It was a civil matter, not a criminal one. He said they would file a missing persons report for Derek, but unless there was evidence of foul play, there was not much they could do. I felt helpless. I called Derek's parents, my voice shaking as I told them what had happened. His mother cried on the phone saying she had no idea where he was and could not believe her son would do something like this. His father was silent, then said he would try to reach Derek, but he sounded doubtful. I reached out to Derek's friends, people he had known for years. None of them had heard from him. One of them, a guy named Paul, who Derek used to play basketball with on weekends, mentioned that Derek had seemed stressed lately. Paul said Derek had mentioned something about money troubles a few weeks back, but he had not gone into detail. I was stunned. Money troubles. We were not rich, but we were not struggling. We paid our bills. We had savings. What money troubles I spent the next 2 days combing through every bank statement, every credit card bill, every receipt I could find. I was looking for something, anything that might explain why Derek would do this. But there was nothing unusual. No secret credit card debt, no gambling losses, no unexplained charges. Everything was normal, which made his disappearance even more incomprehensible. The girls stopped eating properly. Emma barely touched her food, pushing it around her plate with her fork. Sophie stopped talking. She would sit in her room for hours staring at her textbooks but not reading them. I tried to be strong for them, but inside I was falling apart. I felt like I had failed them. I was their mother. I was supposed to protect them. And now their future, the future we had sacrificed so much for, was gone. At work I tried to keep it together, but it was impossible. My coworkers noticed. They asked if I was okay. I lied and said I was fine, just tired. But one of the other nurses, a woman named Angela, who I had worked with for years, pulled me aside during a break. She told me I looked like I was carrying the weight of the world. I broke down and told her everything. She hugged me and told me to take some time off, but I could not. I needed the distraction. I needed to work to feel like I was doing something useful, because at home I felt completely powerless. One evening, about 4 days after Derek disappeared, I was sitting at his desk, going through his things again, hoping I had missed something. I remembered that Derek used to have an old email address from college, one he barely used anymore. On a whim, I tried to log in. I guessed the password on the second try. It was the name of his childhood dog. The inbox was mostly spam, but as I scrolled, something caught my eye. A thread of emails between Derek and a lawyer. My heart started racing. I clicked on the most recent one sent about 2 months earlier. Derek had been asking the lawyer about DNA testing, specifically paternity testing for children. He wanted to know how the process worked, how accurate it was, and how much it cost. The lawyer had responded with detailed information about legal DNA testing, including how to collect samples and which labs to use. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Derek was questioning whether Emma and Sophie were his biological daughters. My mind reeled. Why would he think that we had been together since before the girls were born? There had never been anyone else. Not for me. Not ever. I kept reading. There were no follow-up emails explaining the results or what Derek had done with the information. Just the initial inquiry. But it was enough to make my blood run cold. Why would Derek doubt me? Why would he not come to me if he had questions? And if he had done a DNA test, what had the results been? And how did any of this connect to him stealing the college fund and running away? On the 5th day after Derek disappeared, I was at the hospital halfway through my shift when my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. Normally I would not answer, but something told me to pick up. I stepped into an empty hallway and answered. The voice on the other end was Derek's. It was hoarse, strained, like he had not slept in days. He said my name. Violet. Just that. And I felt a surge of anger so strong I almost hung up. I asked him where he was. I asked him why he had done this to us, to the girls. My voice was shaking, but I refused to cry. Derek said he was sorry. He said he did not want to do it, but he had no choice. I shouted at him. No choice. What kind of excuse was that? He had taken everything from our daughters. He had destroyed our family. There was a long silence. Then Derek said something that stopped my heart. He said, "The girls are not mine, Violet. They are not my daughters." I could not speak. I could not move. My ears were ringing. I asked him what he was talking about. Derek explained, his voice breaking. 2 months ago, his cousin Grant had been in the hospital dying of cancer. Grant was someone Derek had been close to growing up, though they had drifted apart in adulthood. On his deathbed, Grant had called Derek to his side and confessed something. He said that years ago, shortly after Derek and I got married, Grant and I had spent a night together. We had been drinking and things had happened. Grant claimed that Emma and Sophie were his children, not Derek's. I was shaking. I told Derek that was insane. That never happened. Grant was lying. But Derek said he could not ignore it. He had gone to a DNA testing lab in Seattle and submitted samples from the girls. Hair strands he had collected from their brushes. The results came back confirming that he was not their biological father. 0% match. Derek said he felt destroyed. He had raised those girls for 17 years, believing they were his. But they were not. They were the children of another man, a man who had betrayed him. And so Derek said he could not keep paying for their future. It was not his responsibility anymore. He took the money because he felt he deserved it after being lied to for nearly 2 decades. I was crying now, but not out of sadness, out of pure rage. I told him he was wrong. I told him Grant had lied to him. Grant had always hated me. Years ago, before Derek and I got married, Grant had asked me out, and I had turned him down. He had been bitter about it ever since. Derek asked me to explain the DNA test then. If I was telling the truth, why did the test say the girls were not his? I told him I did not know, but I would find out. I demanded to see the results. He texted me a photo of the lab report. It was from a lab in Seattle called Pacific Genetics. The document looked official with the lab's logo and signature at the bottom. I told Derek not to move, not to go anywhere. I was going to prove he was wrong. He said he was staying at a motel in Idaho. He had been driving aimlessly, trying to figure out what to do. He said he still loved me, but he did not know if he could come back. I hung up without saying goodbye. I left work early, telling my supervisor I had a family emergency. I drove home and sat the girls down. I told them everything. I told them about Grant's lie about the DNA test, about their father believing they were not his children. Sophie looked horrified. Emma was crying again, but this time with anger. She said, "That's why Dad left, because some dead guy told him we are not his kids." I said yes, and I told them I was going to prove it was all a lie. The next day, I took both girls to a reputable DNA testing lab in Portland, one that was certified and had excellent reviews. I requested maternity testing to confirm that I was their biological mother. It felt absurd to even have to do it, but I needed documentation. I needed proof. The lab technician was professional and kind. She took swabs from the inside of our cheeks and told us the results would be ready in 3 days. Those 3 days felt like 3 years. I could barely function. I kept replaying Derek's words in my head. The girls are not mine. How could he believe that? How could he throw away 20 years based on the word of a dying, resentful man? When the results finally came, I opened the email with trembling hands. The report was clear. I was the biological mother of both Emma and Sophie with 99.9% certainty. Of course I was. I had carried them for 9 months. I had given birth to them. But seeing it on paper brought a strange sense of relief. Now I had to figure out why Derek's test had been wrong. I looked up the lab Derek had used, Pacific Genetics in Seattle. I found their website, but it looked outdated and unprofessional. I searched for reviews and found dozens of complaints. People saying the lab had given them incorrect results, that the company was under investigation for fraud. One article from a local Seattle newspaper detailed how the lab had been shut down 6 months prior after multiple customers sued for falsified DNA reports. My stomach dropped. Derek had been scammed. Someone had deliberately given him a fake result. But who and why? I drove to Seattle. It was a 2.5-hour drive, and I spent the entire time running through possibilities in my head. When I arrived at the address listed for Pacific Genetics, I found an old office building with broken windows. There was no sign, no indication that a lab had ever been there. I asked the building manager, an older man who was sweeping the hallway, if he knew anything about the DNA lab. He told me it had been shut down months ago after the owner was arrested for fraud. I asked if he knew how I could contact anyone who had worked there. He shrugged and said most of the employees had scattered after the shutdown, but he remembered one guy who used to hang around a lot, a friend of the owner. His name was Howard. It took me another day, but I tracked down Howard through social media. He was not hard to find. He had a public profile with photos of himself at bars and casinos. I messaged him saying I needed to talk about Pacific Genetics. He did not respond. So I showed up at his apartment. When he opened the door, he looked annoyed, but I did not care. I told him I knew he had been involved with the fake DNA lab. I told him I would go to the police if he did not tell me the truth. He hesitated, then let me in. His apartment was small and messy, with pizza boxes stacked on the counter and clothes piled on the couch. I asked him directly, "Did someone pay you to give my husband a fake DNA result?" Howard looked uncomfortable. He said he did not know what I was talking about. I told him I had proof the lab was a scam. I told him I would make sure he was held accountable. Finally, he cracked. He admitted that Grant, Derek's cousin, had paid the lab to produce a fake report. Grant had come to Howard months before he died, offering him $5,000 to make sure Derek received a result, saying the girls were not his biological children. Grant had provided samples claiming they were from Derek and the girls, but Howard now suspected Grant had substituted someone else's DNA. I asked why Grant would do that. Howard shrugged and said Grant told him it was about revenge, something about a woman who rejected him years ago. He wanted to ruin her life. I felt sick. Grant had orchestrated this entire nightmare out of spite, because I had turned him down decades ago, because he could not let go of his bitterness. I asked Howard if he had any proof. He pulled out his phone and showed me text messages between him and Grant discussing the payment and the fake report. He also had emails between Grant and the lab owner. I took photos of everything. I called Derek from my car. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. I told him I had found the truth. I told him about Grant's plan, about the fake lab, about Howard's confession. Derek was silent for a long time. Then I heard him crying. He said he was so sorry. He said he should have trusted me. He said he had been so broken by the idea that the girls were not his that he had not thought clearly. I told him sorry was not enough. He had abandoned his family. He had stolen from his daughters. He had hurt them in ways that might never heal. Derek said he still had most of the money. He had not spent much, just enough for gas and motel rooms. He asked what I wanted him to do. I told him to transfer every single cent back into a new account that I would set up, an account with only my name on it. I told him if he did not do it within 48 hours, I would go to the police and file charges for whatever I could. I would also sue him in civil court. Derek agreed immediately. He said he would do anything to make it right. I also told him not to come home. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I needed time to think. The girls needed time to process. He had broken something that might not be fixable. 2 days later, the money appeared in the new account, all $125,000. I checked 3 times to make sure it was real. Then I set up 2 separate accounts for Emma and Sophie, each with $62,500 in it. I called them into the living room and told them the money was back. Their college funds were secure. Emma cried with relief. Sophie hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. She said, "We can still go, Mom. We can still follow our dreams." I said yes. Nothing and no one was going to take that away from them. That same week, I contacted a divorce lawyer. I knew I could not stay married to Derek. The trust was gone. Even if Grant had manipulated him, Derek had chosen to believe the worst of me without ever asking. He had chosen to take the money and run instead of confronting me. He had abandoned his daughters. Those were choices he made, and I could not forgive them. Derek called several times over the following weeks begging for another chance. He said he loved me. He said he loved the girls. He said he had made a terrible mistake. I told him love was not enough. Trust was the foundation of a marriage, and he had demolished it. I filed for divorce. I asked for full custody of the girls, with Derek having supervised visitation if the girls wanted it. I also asked for child support. Derek did not fight me. He signed everything. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Derek was living in a small apartment across town. The girls saw him twice a month, but the relationship was strained. Emma was still angry. Sophie was more forgiving, but even she admitted it was hard to look at him the same way. I started going to therapy. I needed help processing the betrayal, the anger, the grief. I joined a support group for women going through divorce. It helped to talk to people who understood what it felt like to have your life turned upside down by someone you trusted. Slowly, I started to rebuild. I picked up more shifts at the hospital, not because I needed the money now, but because I liked staying busy. I reconnected with old friends I had lost touch with over the years. I started taking yoga classes on Sunday mornings. I even went on a few dates, though nothing serious. I was not ready for that yet. Emma and Sophie thrived. Emma got her acceptance to Parsons and moved to New York in the fall. She sent me photos of her dorm room, her new friends, her art projects. She was happy. Sophie started at MIT in the same semester. She called me every week, excited about her classes and her research opportunities. Both girls were doing exactly what they had always dreamed of, and I was so proud of them. One evening, I was sitting on the back porch watching the sunset when Sophie called. She said she had been thinking a lot about everything that had happened. She said she understood now why I had divorced their father. She said she was grateful that I had fought for them, that I had not let Derek's actions destroy their futures. I told her I would always fight for her and her sister. That was what mothers did. She said she loved me. I said I loved her too. As I hung up, I realized something. I was okay. I was not the same person I had been a year ago. I was stronger. I was more careful with my trust. But I was also more confident in my own worth. I had learned that I did not need someone else to validate me or complete me. I was enough on my own. Derek and I had built a life together, and he had torn it down. But I had built it back up brick by brick, and this time it was mine. The girls were thriving. I was healing. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. I thought about everything we had been through, the shock of discovering the empty account, the heartbreak of Derek's betrayal, the anger at Grant's cruelty, the relief of finding the truth, the strength it took to stand up and demand what was right. I learned that trust is fragile. Once broken, it is almost impossible to repair completely. But I also learned that betrayal does not have to define you. You can choose to move forward. You can choose to protect the people you love. You can choose to rebuild. I did not forgive Derek. Maybe I never would. But I did let go of the anger. I let go of the bitterness. Not for his sake, but for mine. Because holding on to those feelings was like carrying a weight that only hurt me. I thought about the girls, about the young women they were becoming. I wanted them to see that strength was not about never falling apart. It was about getting back up when you did. It was about standing firm when everything around you was crumbling. It was about fighting for what mattered, even when it felt impossible. I stood up and walked back inside, ready for whatever came next. The past was behind me. The future was wide open, and this time, I was in control. Before I go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? How did you find the strength to move forward? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with anyone who might need to hear it. Your support means everything, and it helps us keep sharing these stories. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that no matter how dark things get, you have the strength to fight your way back to the light. Take care of yourselves, trust your instincts, and never let anyone make you doubt your worth.